Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Jose Talk Sports. Today is Thursday, and as we prepare for tonight's Thursday night football matchup between the Cleveland Browns and the Pittsburgh Steelers, we are left with several questions. Will the Steelers eventually turn to Kenny Pickett as their starting quarterback? How much longer can the Steelers hold on without Defensive Player of the Year TJ Watt? Can Cleveland end its two-game losing streak against the Pittsburgh Steelers, and will anyone be hit over the head with another helmet in tonight's game? Now, I know, of course, I'm just joking about that last bit, but nonetheless, whenever the Cleveland Browns and Pittsburgh Steelers play against each other, there's a lot of implications that go into it, whether it's the historical significance between their rivalry, or let alone just the divisional aspect of it. Currently in the division, the Pittsburgh Steelers are 1-1. Cleveland is also 1-1, as are the Baltimore Ravens. The only team that has not won a game yet is the Cincinnati Bengals, who are still 0-2, searching for their first win of the year. And especially now that the Super Bowl hangover appears to be certainly true for the Cincinnati Bengals, it's going to be interesting to see when they can finally get back in their groove and start winning some games and really defend the AFC North title in that division. Because as of right now, there's really no clear and definitive favorite. I think the Baltimore Ravens are probably the best team of the three teams with a win. However, being that the Browns and Steelers are tied with them, they're still well in contention. In fact, whoever wins this game between the Browns and the Steelers is going to earn, their second win of the season, being the first team in that division to do so. We look last week, the Cleveland Browns had lost to the New York Jets 31-30 in a miraculous comeback by the Jets. The Steelers taking a loss to the New England Patriots 17-14. Both coming off of losses. I think both teams are going to want to come out in a fiery start, whether it's defensively or offensively. Both teams are going to be looking to capitalize on a wave of momentum that they can develop in this game. Of the last 6 meetings between these teams, Pittsburgh is 4-2. They're currently on a 2-game winning streak against Cleveland as they swept them last season. Cleveland currently is averaging 28 points per game and allowing nearly 28 points by their opponent. But you look at Pittsburgh, their defense is only allowing 18.5 points. However, their offense is only putting up 18.5 points. So both teams essentially giving up as much as they're putting on the board, remaining relatively even in the points production and defensively. I mean, you look at Cleveland's games, narrowly beating Carolina by 2 and narrowly losing to New York by 1. And then you look at the Steelers, who had won in overtime by 3, and then against New England, they would lose by 3. So both teams are in a state of flux where their offense and their defense aren't really taking care of the ball in terms of putting up points or preventing the other team by putting up points. I think the biggest question, of course, coming out of the Steelers is Mitchell Trubisky, whether or not they want to continue having him as the starting quarterback. He's not really an exciting pick, especially for Pittsburgh Steelers to be coming off of a guy like Big Ben, who won 2 Super Bowls. Are they going to move to Kenny Pickett? No one knows at the moment. I personally, my prediction is Kenny Pickett will be the starter by the end of the season. As of right now, of course, Mitchell Trubisky is the starting quarterback, but I think Kenny Pickett, and apparently, ever since the draft, apparently he had dropped in the picks, in the rankings, heading into the draft, because of his hand size. Not a lot of folks, outside of Pittsburgh, of course, may know this, but apparently he has smaller hands for a quarterback. That might be an issue in itself. I don't see, if he can ball, he can ball, whether the size of his hands factored into or not. But the biggest question, of course, is, are they going to be moving to Kenny Pickett? You have another guy like TJ Watt, who is missing time, obviously. He's injured, probably will be out for the year. Can the defense hold on without him? As of right now, the defense, like I said, is giving up 18.5 points, which is good. That's, among the top in the league. Pittsburgh has always been able to have a defense that is, not only strong, but is able to prevent its opponents from scoring and gaining yardage. You look at the offenses, though. Cleveland is clearly running the ball more effectively than their opponents in the Pittsburgh Steelers. Pittsburgh is averaging 83 yards, per game in these last 2 games, whereas Cleveland is providing 200 yards on the ground. They're looking at guys like Nick Chubb and Kareem Hunt to help stabilize and control this offense while they wait for Deshaun Watson to serve his suspension. In terms of the offense, though, you look at the passing. Cleveland and Pittsburgh, both about the same, doing 180 yards per game. It's the running game that is really differentiating them between each other. 200 yards for Cleveland, 83 for Pittsburgh. I think that's going to be a key factor into this game. As long as Cleveland is able to, again, sustain momentum, as well as control the clock, control the ball, take care of the ball, I think their defense is going to do just fine. I don't think it's going to be stellar. I don't think it's going to hold Pittsburgh, to under 20 points. I do think Pittsburgh's going to get its hits. I think Pittsburgh is going to get its points. As long as Cleveland on offense is able to hold on to the ball and protect it, and their defense does a decent job of trying to prevent Mitchell Trubisky from beating them, I do think Cleveland is going to win this game. I have them winning 24-20. Not entirely confident in the pick, but I think being that they're going to be playing in Cleveland, I think Cleveland definitely has a better defense, I will say. But with Pittsburgh, their offense is a little shaky. I'm not too confident in Mitchell Trubisky. Najee Harris, of course, is a great running back. However, in these last few games, he's not really showing me as much excitement as he did in his rookie year. Another thing to keep in mind while watching this game, of course, is Baltimore and Cincinnati, who are rivals in the division for the AFC North. Baltimore has an upcoming game against New England, whereas Cincinnati will be facing the New York Jets. Again, the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be looking for their first win of the season. In order to defeat the New York Jets, that's the case. That is the obstacle that's in their way of getting, their first win. And Joe Burrow, I was reading about this the other day. Joe Burrow apparently is off of Instagram and Twitter. He's going full zero dark 30 mode, something LeBron does during the NBA playoffs. He's trying to block the noise, and I think that's good on him, especially with social media being what it is, and in a way it influences our behavior, our mindset. I think it's a good thing that he's getting away from it. I think Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals are going to be just fine. I don't predict them to win the division. I still think Baltimore is the favorite to win it. However, expect Cincinnati to get this win this week against the New York Jets. And for all those Bengal fans, because for those who have been following the channel and, of course, following the videos that I produce on YouTube, I had a video, basically centered around who would win the AFC North, who was the favorite. And it wasn't, me doing a prediction. It was just recapping their offseason and their history. By the way, you check out the video. It's at actually 2,500, thousand viewers. My most viewed video. So I want to thank everybody for doing that as well. But I had so many Bengals fans and Steelers fans coming at me, and for no particular reason, because it wasn't like I was being biased or picking one team or the other. At the time, I had not even predicted that the Baltimore Ravens were going to win the division. But so many of them were saying, well, Cincinnati's going to win it. Duh. Like, obviously, as if I was, some fool who didn't know what I was talking about. And granted, maybe there's some Bengals fans who are diehard and they believe with all, their heart that the Cincinnati Bengals are going to win the Super Bowl. I personally don't think they're going to win the Super Bowl. I don't even think they're going to make it to the Super Bowl, let alone the AFC Championship. However, so many people in the comments were belittling other people as well as the video itself, saying that, this is dumb, that the Bengals are obviously going to win. That's not the case. Every year we have seen it for the last, decade. The team that loses the Super Bowl typically does not perform well the year after. They call it that Super Bowl hangover. You could even look at the Super Bowl champion. Not a lot of times does the Super Bowl champion, return to the Super Bowl. The last time it happened was in 2014, where the Seahawks had won by defeating the Broncos in Super Bowl, 48? They returned in 49. They would lose to the Patriots, of course, with the 1-yard interception. But the Bengals fans, and I have mad, love for the Bengals fans, because I love Joe Burrow. I love Jamar Chase. I think they're great. But let's be honest. It's only week 2. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. I know, obviously, the Bengals are 0-2. They could very well still win the division. It is a winnable division, a competitive division in that. But I just couldn't help myself by mentioning just, the vitriol that they were spewing in the comments. And the comments don't bother me at all. That's why I always say comment your feelings down below. I want to hear your opinions. And I want to see how much of a diehard fan you are of your team, whether it's the Bengals, Ravens, Steelers, whoever. I don't care. The ultimate goal is to talk about sports. So I'm looking forward to this game, of course, because it is a divisional game. But also I want to see how does the Pittsburgh Steelers defense, move forward without TJ Watt. They still have, capable guys on defense like Minkah Fitzpatrick and others, obviously. But also their offense. Their offense is what kind of scares me. I don't see it. You know what I mean? Their tight end's pretty good. Najee Harris, of course, is good, but hasn't really had a couple, good games. And then you look at the Cleveland Browns, who just have a huge question mark around them ever since the whole Deshaun Watson situation, losing out on Baker. But quite frankly, it looks like they're not really missing Baker at all. You saw them beat the Panthers in week 1. I think, the way it's looking, the Cleveland Browns might end up having a better record than Baker Mayfield, and I don't think that's going to help his legacy or his reputation at all. Because the fact that he was a number one pick, went to the Cleveland Browns, had only one good season, let's be honest, and that was the playoff season. Aside from that, trip to the playoffs, what really did he accomplish? Again, not to take away what he did in that season, because it was a great season for him and the Browns. They beat the Steelers in the playoffs. But aside from that, I can see why they wanted to move away from Baker Mayfield. Having a guy like Deshaun Watson, he's an ultimate talent. He's great on the field, but the questions we have about him off the field, some people may look at it as a distraction, but then you also look at how long has it been since he's actually played a game, right? He didn't play last year with the Houston Texans. Correct me if I'm wrong, but maybe one of his last, meaningful games was that playoff series against the Kansas City Chiefs back in 2020 when the Chiefs had won the Super Bowl. I could be wrong about that, but I just feel like Deshaun Watson has missed so much time from the game. And you look at how he was in the preseason, the first drive, and of course it's just the preseason, but is that going to impact his game? Being away for so long, being out of the public eye, and when I say out of the public eye, I don't mean like literally no one's talking about him, because clearly everyone's talking about Deshaun Watson and his accusations. But being out of, the public, because I'm sure he wants to stay home and just avoid all media, avoid all fans, and avoid anybody that's going to criticize him for what happened or didn't happen. We don't know. But when you have so many cases against you, I've always believed in the saying, where there's smoke, there's fire. So the fact that you have so many lined up against you, you're going to tell me every single one of them is false. That's not for me to say. I'm not an expert in law. I wasn't there. I don't know. But when you look at the optics, Cleveland has a lot of distractions around them surrounding Baker Mayfield. I'm interested, again, to see who wins this game. Moving forward, whoever wins this game is going to be the number one seed in that division, because they'll have 2 wins, something nobody else in the division has. If you ask me, I think Cleveland wins. Again, the score 24-20. And one more thing before I end this episode, I wanted to just comment on Brownie the Elf. There was a lot of flack that Cleveland and its fan base was getting for putting an elf on their field, in the middle of the field at the 50-yard line. Me personally, I don't have anything against it, because when you look at the history of the Cleveland Browns, it's not new. Brownie the Elf has been present in that franchise's organizations, in their history. Of course, many people like to associate the dog pound and the bulldog with the Cleveland Browns, let alone just the helmet that was their logo. It still is their logo. But to have something like Brownie the Elf, I think it's interesting, and I think it's unique to the NFL. But I would not be surprised, especially how the game went against New York last week. You look at the Boston Celtics. The Boston Celtics are notorious for the leprechaun that is on their court. And there's been so many fabled stories about the opponent saying that, the Boston Garden was haunted by the leprechaun, and that there would be some plays where just, abnormal events taking place that never happen, and somehow it's like the leprechaun, protecting the TD Garden or the Boston Garden at that time. I wouldn't be surprised if Brownie the Elf was almost like a deterrent, as if a reversal of luck for the Cleveland Browns, because if that's the first game, the result of the first game with Brownie the Elf, they need to start winning with him, because otherwise it's just going to be known for being a deterrent and being almost as if it was a bad luck charm. I'm not wishing bad luck on the Cleveland Browns. I would like to see the Browns do well, because for my whole entire life, the Browns have been bad. They haven't accomplished anything, since Jim Brown. I mean, yeah, they made the AFC Championship in the 80s. Then you move forward to obviously now, where they're in the playoff contention with Baker Mayfield. But it just seems like they can never get it straight. They can never, right the ship and move on to the promised land that is the Super Bowl. They are one of few teams that have never made the Super Bowl, let alone won one, of course. Because as I mentioned, they hadn't won a championship since the 60s with Jim Brown present on the roster. But what is it going to take? What is it going to take for Cleveland to finally, break through and finally become a Super Bowl contending team? I don't know. Do they have their answer in Deshaun Watson? They have, a capable defense started, headed by Myles Garrett. Nick Chubb obviously is playing out of his mind for the last few years. I think he's one of the best defensive players, not named Aaron Donald. Moving forward, though, for Cleveland fans, what is it? What do you guys think you guys need? What's the next mission, the next, talking point for Cleveland Browns fans and the organization to move forward in order to become, who knows, the next best team. Because before Tom Brady, Bill Belichick and Robert Kraft, the Patriots weren't, ever contenders. They were the laughing stock of the league. And then finally, you turn ownership and management around, you get the right quarterback, you build up a good defense, and they became a dynasty. That's not saying the Cleveland Browns are going to be a dynasty, but sometimes little by little, these decisions that, executives and general managers make, it can build the next dynasty. But maybe I'm getting ahead of myself, and maybe the Steelers end up blowing out the Cleveland Browns. Who's to say? I look forward to tonight's game. I can't wait to see it, of course, just like any other NFL game. I can't wait to watch every game because every game has a storyline, has a purpose, and to see the NFL's best athletes on the field is always such a treat. This has been another episode of Jose Talks Sports. You can find me on all social media platforms at JustJose_3. Be sure to follow the podcast on Spotify or subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jose Talks Sports. Once again, thank you for dropping by and talking sports with me, and if you enjoyed all these episodes, be sure to leave a like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the YouTube channel, Jose Talks Sports. And as always, my name is Jose, this has been Jose Talks Sports, and I will see you next time.